Alright, well, I just got done watching the second episode of The Flash. I was a little late in actually tuning in, but that's the beauty of DVR. Now, I will say this second episode, while overall not quite as solid as the pilot, did allow us a little more comfort when it came to the characters and their interactions. I mean, there was much more in the way of settling in this episode than there was during the pilot. You did sort of have to introduce the characters, introduce the Flash, introduce his powers, what he could do. I mean, do the obligatory, we're going to run tests on you, blah, blah, blah. This one, no, we actually start to establish the Flash as this hero. Seeing should he really be going out and fighting crime, getting some more insight into the types of people that he would be fighting, how it would relate to his personal life, namely his day job as, I believe, an analyst. I forget, but also his relationship with Iris. So so yeah, like I said, I did like this episode overall, but in the end, it was not quite as well written or as tight as the pilot. Now, first of all, let's get to the good stuff. Well, the good stuff, the effects and how they utilize the Flash's powers are still very good. Again, there is just sort of that disconnect where I can't really expect these effects to be movie quality. Granted, the effects that we are getting are pretty impressive for television. But I can't really expect these effects to be on quite the same level as, I don't know, Quicksilver from Days of Future Past. So again, I can't really expect them to be quite on that level, but again, with how they use the Flash's powers, the Flash, if you do him poorly, could easily just be a one-trick pony. I mean, he runs fast. But no, for the most part, they do continue to find creative ways to utilize his powers. I mean, for instance, when he has this liquid in a test tube and it requires shaking, you see him like vibrating it very. You see him shaking it at super speed. So, again, little touches like that I think make this whole concept come alive that much more. And again, I like some of the creative ways that they're using his powers. In addition, the acting, Grant Gustin still shines as Barry Allen. He still carries the show pretty well. And and in addition, like I said, we got a little bit more in the way of comfort from the other actors this time around. Danielle Panabaker, the guy who plays Cisco, Tom Cavanaugh. Rick Cosnett didn't get as much to do, but Jesse L. Martin as Joe West, he got some more material to work with this time around, namely paternal material. I'll get to that in a second. And Candice Patton. These guys, oh, and John Wesley Shipp. These guys are all very good, and even the guest stars like William Sadler. He didn't have a whole lot to do in the grand scheme of things, and I am kind of sad that we're not really going to see much more of him, considering what happens. I probably just spoiled the end of the episode for you, but again, for what the character had to be, for what the character of Simon Stagg had to be, I did like William Sadler in the role. I can't really imagine anyone else in the role. Again, not really a whole lot to him, and I think that goes back to one of the fundamental issues that I'm finding with this show within these first two episodes, but again, I'll get to that. However, one glaring issue I have is some of the dialogue this time around. Some of this dialogue was just so bad and corny. Think of the worst. Think of the worst overly poetic, overly cheesy dialogue from Arrow, and then actually up that in severity and how much it makes you cringe. I mean, this dialogue literally was cringeworthy. I was like, oh God, did he really say that? And it's not that kind of charmingly cheesy that the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies did. No, this dialogue was just plain bad, to the point where I was saying, okay, no sane person would ever say this. This dialogue just is completely absent of any verisimilitude in how corny it is. But yeah, that was a problem. And in addition, the villain once again was a little bit underdeveloped. the villain this time around, Multiplex, again, I like how they utilized him, but again, that's just powers wise. As a character, he felt kind of thrown in. And again, I think some of that has to do with the fact that they're spending so much time establishing these other characters, the protagonists, that the antagonists are kind of shortchanged, as it were. Again, this is just how I gauge these first 2 episodes. But the villain this time around, I'm sorry, when the final fight of the episode is happening, during the climax, the villain should not be expositing his backstory. That is a sign of a that is a problem with the script right there. That is something that should have been revealed in the middle of the episode, or at max maybe 2/3 of the way through the episode. The villain explaining his backstory, we have no time to digest it in the climax because we're just worrying about, how is Barry going to defeat this guy. So yeah, Multiplex was kind of a letdown in terms of an episodic villain. Again, maybe he'll get a little bit better. Or no, he can't really get better, can he? Because he's dead now. But I suppose they could find some way to write him back in, especially with them connecting the whole stem cell thing to how he multiplies himself. So I don't know. I guess anything's possible now that we've introduced the concept of metahumans. But another glaring issue with the episode, and this kind of goes back to the dialogue, partially, but the character of Joe West and his relationship with Barry. I thought Joe West was very overbearing this episode. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm failing to see this from the perspective of the father figure that they're trying to write Joe West as. But yeah, I just thought Joe West and his lecturing of Barry, I just thought he was completely out of his element. He was lecturing Barry on stuff that he had absolutely no comprehension of. Frankly, I was on Barry's side the whole time. I thought the points that he was making were completely void. And I think the writers knew that too, because he eventually came around to Barry's side in the end of the episode. And Barry didn't really have to go through any kind of serious arc this episode, except for the fact that, he now has his father figures, or his secondary father figures, vote of confidence. So again, that was one area where I thought the episode was a little bit lacking in the whole paternal aspect. I think they could have found a less contrived way of writing that in, and again, the dialogue didn't help. The dialogue's like, "You're not my father, I hate you." I said, okay, we've seen this before. And frankly, I expect more from writers who are as clearly talented as these. So again, those were some of the disappointing aspects of this episode that actually made it inferior to the pilot episode. I hope this is not going to be a recurring thing on The Flash, or a recurring aspect of The Flash where the protagonists are fine, they're well acted, but the villains suck. I know that's not the case on Arrow, because Arrow has a plethora of very memorable, very menacing, very, very compelling villains. I mean, the Dollmaker I liked, the Clock King I liked, the Robert Knepper character. Malcolm Merlyn, Deathstroke, just to name a few, Nissa Al Ghul. So the villains on Arrow, for the most part, are pretty solid. And so far, the villains of The Flash haven't quite been up to par, and maybe that kind of has to do with The Flash not really having as good of a rogues gallery as the Arrow show has at its disposal, because Arrow, I know for a fact, has used some Batman villains in its roster. So again, maybe it's just the nature of Flash's rogues gallery. I don't know, but I think they're really going to have to step up their game with the villains and again fix some of the really bad dialogue. But those elements didn't prevent me from enjoying this episode. So yeah, I guess that's the important thing.